In this video, I'm going to be answering whether your house should be considered an investment or not. Should you really rent where you live, or should you rent what you own? And this is a very important question, so stick around for the whole video to get the answer. So what is an investment? So an investment is basically an asset that you buy that's going to generate income for you. So it could be monthly income that's going to generate, but it could also be a payback once you sell the property or the asset, right? So when we look at that, when we look at our house, what is the primary purpose for the house? And when we look at buying the house, we're typically we're not looking at the house in order to think about selling the property later on for profit. And we're certainly not generating income, even if you may want to, rent the basement like I did, or you want a house hack or something like that. These are just more confusing ways of financing that particular purchase. And the primary purpose of buying a house, obviously, is to live in it, right? And save on rent. It's about choosing a living space over another. It's choosing a house here that you're going to own versus the renting a house in the same neighborhood or renting an apartment. And typically when we look at an investment, when we are in the process of investing, we are thinking right away about kind of like what the value of that asset would be. So we're selecting that asset, we're selecting the house basically because we're concerned about making the profit. So we look at what the value of that investment will be in the future, or how much income it's going to generate, and we're looking at all of that up front in order to determine the price we're going to buy it at. When we're buying a house for ourselves, that's not an investment. Obviously, we're looking at how the furniture is going to fit, what changes we're going to have to make, which room we're going to paint, what color. All these kinds of decisions are great for where you live, but these are not investment decisions. So it doesn't sound like you're selecting an investment when you're walking through the house like that. I know that most people are going to say that, yeah, when I bought the house, I knew it would appreciate and all of that, so I knew it was a good investment from that purpose. But the goal was never to buy the property in order to sell it later on. It was really more about living the property and maybe some kind of inflation protection because you were getting into the property. Maybe it was a cost issue because you wanted to have something that would cost less than a rent. Often they would have something about like you kind of have forced savings because you are constantly putting mortgage payment, and that mortgage payment is actually paying down the mortgage, the principal. So you're kind of like in a mode of forced saving. You're building equity by paying down the mortgage, and you don't have to pay the rent at that point. So these are all valid reasons, but that doesn't make them an investment from that perspective. So when we look at an investment property, we also look at, we calculate the return really right up front. We look at the after repair value, and then we divide it basically by the purchase price and the cost of renovation and any kind of holding cost, and that gives us a return. And that return is really going to determine whether we're going to buy the property or not, whether we're going to try to negotiate the purchase price down, whether we're going to adjust the scope of work for the renovations, and all these things, right? So all these things are done up front, and this is something that doesn't happen like that when you're buying a house to live in. You're normally thinking about these when you're selling the property, and you're realizing, you're looking back and saying, oh, that was a great investment, quote unquote. But an investment is really a forward-looking thing, and owning a house is really when you're looking back to say, oh, I made some money on that, or or not. So even when we look at taxes, the IRS see and thinks of investment properties, a house, single-family rental, very differently than a house you live in. So for example, a lot of the deductions that you can do on an income properties, like insurance premium, like utilities, like any kind of repairs and maintenance, these can be deducted from the cost of from your income tax as cost of owning that property. If you own your own home, you cannot deduct your utility costs, you can't deduct your repairs or maintenance on the house. That's pretty obvious. So even from that perspective, the IRS is treated those differently. On the capital gains, they're also treating them very differently. On the single family home that you live in, you have some write down that you can do, but really at the end, if there's still capital gains left, it's going to be considered long-term capital gains. If you do it on the income property or real estate in general, you can actually do there's all kinds of different strategies where you can do tax deferral on the capital gains. So the 1031 exchange is probably one of the most commonly known method for deferring taxes on your capital gains. So that tool cannot be used on your primary residence, for example. So it can only be used on income generating properties. So this is why I think that a house is not really an investment. It's really more like a consumer decision on how to acquire or to live, to acquire your living space, basically. It's a little bit like deciding between whether you should buy a car or lease a car. It's a little bit like that, except of course that a car doesn't have appreciation. So this is kind of like similar in thinking. So it's much more a consumer thinking. But how would you treat your house as an investment? So you would have to really look at it and really calculate the expected return on your investment. So you would look at, obviously you don't have annual revenue, but owning a house, you get a benefit from owning the house. So you could consider, for example, what is the market rent for that property, and assume that this is really the benefit that you're getting, and consider that as part of your annual revenue for the property. So you're saving that money by not having to rent another house, another similar house of the same size, right? So that would be the benefit. So consider that your annual revenue. Then we're going to start subtracting all kinds of costs that the landlord would have to pay if this house was for rent. So that means like the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance of the property. You can also look at some of the repairs per year that you have done, and then kind of say, okay, but this is the average per year in terms of repairs. Then you would look at your mortgage payment and take that out as well. And what would be left would be your net cash flow, right? So your net cash flow per year, and you divide that by how much money you put in that property. So that would mean your down payment on the property, any kind of closing costs, plus any kind of renovation, significant renovation that you've done on the property. So this is the capital that you've put on the property, the cash that you've put on the property. And that ratio of the net cash flow divided by the down payment and the amount of renovation that you've done over the years is going to give you what's called the cash on cash return for that property. So that gives you an appreciation for kind of like what is the value, what is the real return on that investment. You could also look at the return on equity by looking at basically that net cash flow and dividing it by the equity that you have on the house. That would also give you an appreciation for how well this equity is working for you. So when you look at these numbers, you should, if these numbers are below like 4% or 3%, you may want to consider alternative ways of leveraging your equity, or maybe even leveraging your down payment and then investing it somewhere else to maximize, to make sure that that equity is working for you. You may also want to reconsider buying a house if this is the case, if really it doesn't make sense. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to click the thumbs up. This really helped the YouTube algorithm distribute my video to a broader audience. If you like anything that relates to real estate, investment, entrepreneurship, financial freedom, passive income, make sure that you watch the other videos on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, click that notification bell to be notified whenever a new video is posted on my channel. Thank you.